Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 2, Episode 4 review of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? So last time I reviewed Season 2, Episode 3 of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And continuing my summer special. So I hope you guys haven't been enjoying the summer special of this year. And of course today we will be covering Season 2, Episode 4 of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Titled Scooby's Night with a Frozen Fright, which was released on October 3rd, 1970. The short synopsis of the episode is, while surf fishing, Shaggy catches, of all things, a caveman frozen in a block of ice, which was lost at sea after sliding off the deck of a ship. So the kids take the frozen Neanderthal to Oceanland, the local aquarium. When they come back to the aquarium later that night to retrieve Shaggy's fishing pole, they find that the ice is melted and the caveman is now apparently alive, roaming the grounds. So, like every other episode of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? And for any newcomers that haven't seen my previous reviews, I will of course be watching this episode on the Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Complete Series box set, which, like I said, you should definitely get this box set if you're a fan of the original series. It has every episode of the original series, plus that fake third season, which is really the third season of the Scooby-Doo show. So there's no third season of Where Are You? That could be a whole discussion on its own about how stupid that is. But yeah, so continuing where we left off, last week's episode was a pretty disappointing one. A lot of people loved the Creeper and loved that episode, but I kind of vocalized that although I thought the Creeper was a strong villain, I felt like he wasn't strong enough to save the episode and make it an amazing episode. So we start off with a pretty below average episode. Now, this episode, I believe most fans don't really admire this episode or really like it that much. And I say that because the caveman episode really isn't talked about by the Scooby-Doo community. It's not really one that people talk about or consider their favorites or even go back to. In fact, I probably would consider it to be one of many people's least favorite episodes of the Season 2 episodes. And this is just due to the fact that it just isn't talked about much in the fandom. Like Mystery Mask Mix-Up is just a very, it's just, an episode that's not very well remembered by the Scooby-Doo community. So obviously this isn't one that seems to be very good considered good by the Scooby-Doo community. But I also haven't heard any negative reception on it, so I don't know what to expect in this episode. But, of course, audience opinion doesn't sway me, and I go into the episode, with my own thoughts and opinions, as evident by the last episode, which was viewed highly by a lot of people, but I don't consider the Creepers episode as one of my favorites, despite it having a strong villain. But let's look at this episode to see whether I think it's a good or bad episode of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And maybe if it's considered, maybe it's underrated, maybe it's worse than people, make it out to be, or whether there's a reason why it's not talked about fondly by the Scooby-Doo community. The episode begins during a storm where a frozen caveman gets loose and falls off the research vessel that he was on. We then cut to the gang all having fun at the beach, with Shaggy and Scooby in particular doing some fishing, probably to get some food for the gang. And it's nice seeing the gang having some fun. I even love a little moment where Velma's trying to ask Shaggy to have a dance with him, kind of like a callback to the previous episode. And Shaggy's like, hold on, I'm gonna let me just try one more time to get some fish for the rest of the gang. And so Shaggy throws his fishing line and tries to catch fish, but instead he snags and pulls ashore a giant block of ice containing the frozen caveman that had fallen off the research vessel. So Velma recognizes it as the 2-million-year-old caveman discovered in the Arctic and was washed over the side of the research vessel during the storm, as shown in the opening. And she read about it in the papers, so that kind of is like a callback to episode 1, where the gang, or at least Velma, even when they're not solving any mysteries, they keep up to date on their local news. And so the kids decide to take it to Oceanland, which is where the caveman was originally supposed to go, but had been washed over the research vessel because of the storm. And they leave it with the two scientists, Professors Wayne and Ingstrom. So after they leave, they cut to someone turning on the space heater onto the caveman. And then it then slowly moves to where Ingstrom and Wayne are, and Ingstrom leaves for the dock side, to do, continue whatever research he was doing, or whatever experiments he was doing. And while Wayne remains behind to work on some, his research notes. Now, I'll touch on this scene later, because I feel like this scene is like a scene of, there's no way he could have done that. And I don't know what the animators were thinking, but the man behind the mask, there's no way he could have done what he did in this scene. And I will talk about it later. It's ridiculous. No way it would have happened. So then we cut to the gang's favorite place, the malt shop, their second home, basically, their little hangout. And while at the malt shop, while they're finishing up at the malt shop and getting ready to go home, Shaggy remembers that he left his fishing tackle at Oceanland, and the gang, says, and Fred's like, "Oh, it's not too late. Let's, go pick it up before the aquarium closes." So the gang, decides to return to pick it up. And honestly, I feel like this is not a good enough reason for the gang to go back to Oceanland. If it was something more serious or urgent, I could understand them going back this quickly. But I just don't see why. I don't consider Shaggy's fishing tackle a big enough reason to go back to Oceanland for it. I'm sure Shaggy could get another fishing tackle. I'm sure he's got, maybe another one, or he could easily get another one. Like, I don't see why the gang are so urgent to go get it. I just don't think it's a good enough reason to go back to Oceanland to do that. But, that's just me. But regardless, the gang do return to Oceanland, and when they go back there, they see like a whole fucking mess. They find the doors ripped off its hinges, Wayne's torn parka, and the caveman thawed out and missing. So Shaggy decides he's going to go call the police, which is a good idea. If they have the option to, they might as well, because this is a messy crime scene that probably is worth, calling the police on. But, unfortunately, the phone is broken, because that's how bad their luck is. Scooby, notices the line's torn and tries to tell Shaggy, but he doesn't notice until, he tries to call. So with no way to contact the police or get any outside help, the gang decide, fuck it, let's go investigate and, get to the bottom of this mystery. Let's find out where the professors went. So they notice some giant caveman tracks, and they decide to follow them to the dock, where Shaggy's even holding Scooby, because of how scared Scooby is. Where they see Ingstrom working a strange device and seemingly talking to the fish. So Fred asks Scooby to go creep up and hide near Ingstrom to see what he's saying or what he's up to, just any information that can help. So Scooby does, and Ingstrom takes fright and flees into a shack when he hears Scooby creeping up on him. And it's a pretty funny scene of when, once Ingstrom notices, because the way Scooby, what he's covered in and how he acts is fucking hilarious. I feel, on the one hand, I feel bad for Scooby for what's happening, but on the other hand, I fucking laugh every time this scene happens. I can't tell you how many times this scene makes me laugh, because it's just like, it's one of those Scooby moments that you just cannot laugh at. It's fucking hilarious. I think Scooby's like covered in like pails and buckets, and has a tarp on him or something like that. He's just like on a whole mess. And it just, you know, makes me laugh all the time. It's one of my favorite Scooby scenes in the series, and one of the funniest scenes in the episode.
Scoob, look out for those pails!
Scooby, are you all right?
So the gang are suspicious of Engstrom and want to find out what the heck he's up to. So Fred decides the only way they're going to find out is to open the door to the shack that Engstrom ran to and hide after he saw Scooby. So when Fred opens the door to the shack, they discover the angry caveman who came out of fucking nowhere. I was surprised. I was like, oh, where the hell did you come from? And then he chases the whole gang around Oceanland. And the funniest scene, one of the funny scene in this mini little chase scene, because Shaggy and Scooby are the ones who mostly get chased by the caveman. Fred, Daphne, and Velma are able to hide successfully, but Shaggy and Scooby can't. You know, they fuck up. And it's because when Shaggy and Scooby are hiding behind a curtain, Scooby's tail is sticking out, and the caveman keeps trying to step on it. Scooby, he keeps missing, and then eventually he does step on it and makes Scooby fucking scream his eyes, scream really fucking loud, but into a bag. Cartoon logic at its best. And he gives the caveman the bag that he screamed in, and it screams back at the caveman when he takes it, and he gets pissed. It's a really funny and entertaining scene. I always laugh at that. It's between this and this earlier scene with Scooby. The comedy is definitely on point with these two, especially Scooby. He's just making me laugh really well in this episode. But one thing later I noticed is that, while Shaggy and Scooby are being chased by the caveman, Fred, Daphne, and Velma are trying to find them. They look all over Oceanland. They can't find them anywhere. So Fred's like, I hope the big and ugly caveman didn't find them. And Velma's like, not a chance. If I know those two chickens, they're probably miles away from the caveman by now. Which is like, Velma, I don't think you know your friends well, because Shaggy and Scooby have the worst fucking luck ever, because they run into the monster practically all the time, and that's what the animators want, and that's what I like. But she's got to notice this at least. Like, it's been 2.5 seasons. It's been 1 season and almost a half of a second season, and she still doesn't think that Shaggy and Scooby would be the first to run into the caveman. Shaggy and Scooby tried to hide, but they failed. Just goes to show how much Velma does not know them well. And there are a lot of nice other funny moments later on with Shaggy and Scooby and, in the other parts of the aquarium while being chased by the caveman, but I love the bag scene. I think that's the funniest one. That's the one I laugh at the most. Another nice comedic scene for me. I love it.
Now you really got a man!
So after Shaggy and Scooby narrowly escaped the caveman, Velma reveals that she found a map showing the currents towards Oceanland and an object anchored offshore. She found this in the lab of where I assume Wayne and Engstrom were working in the caveman, or maybe it was a different lab, who knows. So Shaggy and Scooby take a boat out to where the X is shown on the chart, while Fred and Daphne stay behind to find out what the caveman's up to. Kind of pointless because they don't really come up with anything when Shaggy and Scooby and Velma all return. So kind of seems like that'll come into a point that I have in my outro later about Fred and Daphne, but yeah, completely pointless. It sounds like they just want to have some alone time with each other. And Shaggy and Scooby and Velma all find a fishing boat where the X is shown on the chart. So they dock their boat onto the fishing boat. They investigate the fishing boat to see what they can find. And they investigate one room. And when they investigate that room, the caveman locks them inside with the ice machine that is in that room. And the ice machine, is turned on, full blast, churning out giant ice blocks. So Shaggy gives Scooby a Scooby snack to try and, help them escape out of the room and come up with an idea. And he does come up with the idea. It doesn't work as he plans, but he still is able to get everyone out of the room with the key that locked the door. And thankfully, they got out just in time before they escaped just in time before being crushed by all these huge blocks of ice. So they decide to go back to Oceanland to tell Fred and Daphne what they found, only to realize that their boat has been destroyed. So Velma has an idea of how to get back to shore, and they use the giant block of ice to paddle back ashore to Oceanland. So they meet back up with the gang, and Fred devises a trap to capture the caveman. To do this, he decides to have Shaggy and Scooby as bait, as per usual. But for some reason, he decides to have them dressed as fish, which I have no idea why he has them dressed as fish. They don't really need to be dressed as fish in order to lure the caveman. Could have just been their normal selves, and the caveman would have chased them. The only useful thing was that Scooby used his swordfish costume to get the caveman's attention. But they could have easily done that with anything. And so they lured, Shaggy and Scooby, dressed as fish, are supposed to lure the caveman to a spot where Freddy and the girls are going to drop a net on him. That's right, just a simple fucking net. Hey, well, if Fred wants to go simple, I'm not going to blame him. I do love his over-the-top traps a lot more than when he's simple, but, if he wants to be simple this week, that's totally on him. But, of course, Fred's trap doesn't work, as per usual. But this time, it's not really Fred's fault. It's more so Daphne's, because Daphne, for some reason, when she hears the commotion, she goes over. If she puts too much of her body leans her body way too much over the railing, and causes her, Velma, and Fred all to fall because she hears them coming. Like, yeah, Daphne, we know we can hear them coming. You don't need to be leaning over the rail. You could have easily hurt yourself by doing that. And she pulls, like I said, she pulls everyone else down with the net, and it falls on top of them and Shaggy and Scooby, who are still dressed as fish. Stupid. Very stupid. So yeah, thanks to Danger Prone Daphne, the trap didn't work. So the caveman chases them again, throughout Oceanland, and this cues our fourth musical chase scene. Now, this chase scene is good, but I gotta say, the song that's performed by Austin Roberts this week is 7 Days a Week. Now, this song is perhaps the weakest of the four songs so far. It's not bad, it's just not a song I could see myself going back to that often. It's not the type of song I would love to hear out of a chase scene. It doesn't have that chase scene vibe, but, I want something more, little more high, octane, maybe a little more bubblegum poppy. When a chase scene ensues, I want, a little more energy out of it. This one feels like a more soothing, calming song. Not the type of song that, gives me energy, and, bumps up the tension when the gang are being chased by the villain. It's a good song, for what it's worth. Just the weakest of the four. And, the chase scene's good, I guess, but isn't amazing either. But I will say it's probably, I prefer the comedy scenes from earlier, but I'll say the chase scene's alright. I'll still, watch it every now and again and listen to the song, but it's not the type of song that I would listen to. But the caveman chases them throughout this whole musical chase scene, and eventually he falls into the tank where he is held by a giant clam. Shaggy gets a rope in order to lasso him out. He pulls him out, and he is unmasked as, guess who? Professor Wayne. So, like I said, the final chase scene's pretty good, musical chase scene. Not the best of the series. The song is not even the best of the series. Like I said, it's the weakest. It's alright. Nothing special. But I still enjoy it. I still like the chase scene. And a nice little bait and switch reveal where, a lot of the episode, they try to make you think it's Ingstrom, but of course it's, it ends up being Wayne, which, the episode didn't really give much hints to, it being Wayne, so yeah. But a good chase scene. Not the best scene of the episode. Like I said, still think Shaggy and Scooby's comedy from earlier is more entertaining than this chase scene. But not a bad chase scene. It has some good moments in it. Especially from the caveman, when the caveman gets fucking, hit by an anchor on his foot and screams out in pain. Peak physical comedy, that's best. This is why I love the original series.
Well, it's Saturday morning. Don't know what to do since Monday morning. I've been dreaming about you, yeah. 7 days a week now. 7 days a week. You've even got me talking in my sleep. 7 days a week. Got me going in circles. Round and round. 7 days a week. Round and round. Every time I see you. Round and round. Coming down the street. 7 days a week now. 7 days a week. It happens every time I see you. 7 days a week. I just don't think I can make it without you. I feel so good just being around you. 7 days a week now. 7 days a week. Oh yeah. Feels so good just being around you.
Someone get me out of here!
Hey, like he can talk.
Let's pull him out, Shag, and we'll see who he really is. All together, pull!
It's Professor Wayne.
So Professor Wayne had heard about the loss of the Arctic caveman in the newspaper, and so he had devised his own scheme. So he had constructed his own frozen caveman at the fishing boat with the intent of letting it drift down to ocean land. So he basically got his own caveman costume that looked identical to the actual caveman that got lost at sea, and sent it adrift, to currents that were going to be going to ocean land. And he froze it in a block of ice just like, the other caveman was. And after its recovery, he melted it and disguised himself as the caveman with the idea of making it appear the caveman came to life and made him and Engstrom disappear. And once the commotion was over and the caveman, story had died down, Professor Wayne would have reappeared, claiming that he survived. His ultimate motive was to get rid of Engstrom and steal his revolutionary new marine life communicator, as the invention was worth millions of dollars. So pretty good motive, pretty unique motive, something new we hadn't seen before. it does come back to money, but he did want, but I think it's a good motive. It doesn't feel repetitive. Feels nice and fresh. One thing, so I'm assuming if getting rid of Engstrom, I'm assuming he would have had to kill him, because there's no way he would have kept Engstrom alive like that. So that's pretty dark. He would have fucking killed Engstrom over his invention. I don't know how he would have done it, but it's not as dark as the last episode where Carswell had the bank guard tied up in the basement, but who knows what he did in that shack. I don't know where Engstrom even was, so not really any dark intents that you can kind of make guesses on, kind of like in the last episode. But so like I said earlier, like I mentioned, there was a scene where Wayne and Engstrom were in the ice lab, whatever you want to call it, where the caveman was frozen. There is no way in hell Professor Wayne could have turned that space heater on and go to where he was without Engstrom noticing. No fucking way. And it's not like it really, because it cut from the guy, the person behind the mask, turning on the space heater, and then zooming, panning to the other side and showing Wayne and Engstrom already having a conversation. So there's no way in hell Wayne could have done that fast. That was terrible continuity. Unless if he's the fucking Flash, or has some time travel or something like that, there is no way he could have turned that space heater on and run all the way and start that conversation before the audience even knew it. No way in hell. Especially Engstrom wouldn't have noticed that. He would have definitely noticed that if he did that. So the animators must have had an off day or something, or they didn't do a good job of continuity, because that was just a glaring error or glaring glitch on that part. But the episode ends with the gang dancing at the mulch shop, and Scooby dances around with an empty caveman suit, because Shaggy figures Scooby needed a dance partner, and what better way to make use of the costume. And I like this because it means Shaggy gets to dance with Velma, he gets to have his dance with Velma, Fred gets to dance with Daphne, and Scooby doesn't get left out and gets to have a dance partner of his own with the costume and have some fun. And I like that. I think that's great. I think Shaggy and Velma had some good chemistry in this episode, just and Scooby as well. I think they all three had great moments in this episode. Very well done. But yeah, that's how the episode ends, with the gang just having some fun at the mulch shop. I'm going to give Season 2, Episode 4 of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? 3 stars out of 5. So yeah, it's a pretty average episode. A step up from the previous episode, but really only because of certain elements. So I'm going to start off with the negatives of the episode and what I think didn't work. So we'll start with, members of the gang. So there are 2 members of the gang that I feel were very weak in this episode, and those 2 were Fred and Daphne. Very weak. Didn't feel like they had any presence or involvement in the story. You know how like last week I felt like Daphne was weak? Well, this is even worse because both Fred and Daphne are weak. Besides Fred, devising a trap and Daphne being danger prone for one moment, nothing really happens with them. It doesn't, Fred doesn't really show off his leadership skills or help piece together the mystery. Velma feels like she does most of that. It feels like Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby do all the work while Fred and Daphne just fuck around and do whatever. It doesn't feel like they play much of a part in this mystery, and I just think that sucks because I feel like Fred and Daphne are vital members of the team, and they can bring, they can help with certain things, but all they did was, Fred made a trap and Daphne being danger prone, which are two things I like to see out of them, but I like to see more than just that. I don't think that was enough for them, and I just think they had no part in the mystery. They didn't feel like they, did anything in the story, or even, just not really any character moments or any relationship moments or any, involvement in the mystery. They just felt weak and, were very underutilized in this episode. So it sucks, but yeah, friend Daphne not utilized well at all in this episode. The clues of the mystery were pretty weak as well. I don't feel like, and the reason they were weak for me is because they didn't really point towards any suspect at all. Good clues in a mystery will help point towards a suspect or a good number of suspects. And I feel like the clues in this episode didn't really point towards Wayne or Ingstrom. The episode made you try to make you think it was Ingstrom. But they don't do that usual episode thing of where the clues say one thing, but the episode wants you, makes it obvious on another person. They kind of keep you guessing on who it could be, and the clues just don't really point towards anything. I mean, you got the map, you got the blocks of of ice and the fishing boat, but really, there's nothing pointing towards Wayne or Ingstrom to make you think, oh, maybe this guy's the suspect. And I just don't think that's good for clues. Clues should be able to point towards a certain suspect or suspects. Just some type of, point, somebody to point towards. But I feel like with this episode, the clues just didn't do that, so they were pretty weak. They didn't really feel like they offered much in the clue department, so that was pretty weak. Now, I gotta say, overall, a pretty big negative for this episode is the caveman himself, the villain of the episode. The villain was very weak, both in and out of costume. Outside of costume, you had Professor Wayne, who was the man behind the mask. He was pretty much bland and boring, did nothing at all. He barely had any presence. He was in, a couple scenes before, he got, before he made himself go missing, but we don't really learn much about him before that happens, so it just kind of he doesn't really tell the story of a caveman, or, offer any insight, or do anything creepy or menacing or funny outside of costume. He's just a very bland and boring person and suspect, so he sucks out of costume. And in costume with the caveman, I feel, is not scary or threatening at all. He's not scary or intimidating in the slightest. I would not be scared of this man. I'd be hesitant around him. I wouldn't want him to hit me with that club, but I would not be scared of him, coming after me. He's just not scary or intimidating. He's funny in a few moments. He has his moments in certain chase scenes where he's pretty funny. But I feel like he was very non-existent in the episode. The caveman really only popped up, I think, 2 times throughout the episode. It felt like the caveman had no presence in this episode. Which is not something that I really like to see. Sure, the mystery should be a focus, but we also want to balance that with the monster himself, the caveman. And I don't feel the caveman made much of a presence. He didn't show up as often as he should have. He just kind of felt very underutilized in this episode and maybe it's just because he just didn't have any moments. And the caveman just stinks as a villain. He's not a good villain. He has some funny moments, but he overall just feels very non-existent throughout the episode. And he's not scary or intimidating. So I just can't get behind this villain. So both in and out of costume, the villain just sucks. Not good on the villain department. Basically the opposite of last week's episode. And finally, I feel like the atmosphere sucked too. There really wasn't much tension or suspense, and it didn't feel creepy at all. So you got the aquarium setting, which, I don't like. The aquarium's a nice, unique setting, and I feel like I'll talk about that later, but I just feel like there wasn't much atmosphere to try to build up the caveman's appearance or make it feel like your life was in danger or there was gloom in the atmosphere. While I like the uniqueness and setting, I don't feel this episode gives me Scooby Doo vibes and gives me that tension or suspense that I'm looking for in the atmosphere. I don't feel like there's creepiness in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is just very, non-existent, not creepy, just not there at all. So yeah, it sucks, but the atmosphere was not there, and I just didn't get any spooky vibes out of this location at all, or at any point during the episode. So yeah. Now for the positives of the episode, and I'll start off with the other three members of the gang, which I've talked about well in this episode. We'll start with Velma. I think Velma was really good in this episode. She did a great job helping to piece together the mystery, but one thing I really loved is that she had great chemistry with Shaggy and Scooby in this episode. They were like a great team in this episode. Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby felt like they did most of the heavy lifting. Friend Daphne didn't feel like they did shit. Honestly, they could have just had, if it felt like Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby would, could have been by themselves for this mystery, and it wouldn't have affected much, except for like Fred setting up a trap and Daphne being danger prone. But yeah, Velma did her part well. She had great, chemistry with Shaggy and Scooby. She felt like she played a vital role in this mystery. And Shaggy and Scooby, our comedic duo, were of course great as well. They were very funny, and they were good helping hands for Velma in this mystery. They didn't feel useless. They felt like they helped Velma out with the mystery and piecing together what happened. They did a lot in this episode, so I feel like, unlike the last episode where a lot of the members of the gang were, while I gave positives for them, I felt like they were a little bit weak. This time, I can strongly say Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby were great, but it was Fred and Daphne that I feel like weren't used as well as they could have been. But they were all three of them were great. This was a good episode for Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby. They had great chemistry with each other. This trio did a good job helping to solve the mystery, doing all the heavy lifting. Really good episode for these guys. Definitely some great moments for them. Then you have the mystery, which was fine for the episode. It suited it. It served the episode well. Nothing special. You're just basically wondering what happened to Professor Wayne and, where the caveman went. Not exactly like the most intriguing mystery ever. It suits the episode fine, but it's not something that I think is great or anything. Not amazing at all. It doesn't have a strong hook, but it has a nice enough hook that you could be slightly interested in it. But yeah, the mystery serves the episode well. Nothing special. It's fine. The suspect department was good too. I felt like they kept you guessing with the suspect department because you had two suspects. Because the episode, while it did, although I will say I didn't like that they kind of point towards Engstrom, or at least the gang try to point towards Engstrom. The episode doesn't really try to point you towards it. The gang does. But I feel like this, we had two suspects for one villain, which is good. Not amazing, but good. It serves the episode well. And I wish they would have pointed more in the clue department, like I said, on Engstrom and Wayne, so we could have been kept guessing. But it kind of just felt like, we weren't able to be suspicious of both Wayne and Engstrom, because Wayne got kicked out of the story pretty early, and Engstrom was the only one to be, suspicious enough to, warrant, warn us being like, oh, maybe he might be behind it. But yeah, the suspects were good for the episode. We had two suspects, so that's fine. Definitely could have been a little bit better at trying to make us, to try to keep us guessing more. Had they made Wayne suspicious too, I think that would have been a lot more suitable. I wish they didn't kick him out so early in the episode. I do realize he had to dress up as the caveman, but it could have been a lot better. But it works. The suspects are fine. There's nothing bad there. Then you have the motive of the villain for the caveman. So Professor Wayne's motive was great because of how unique it was. Yes, he wanted money. He wanted to sell his, sell the invention for millions of dollars. But it doesn't feel like, it's not like last week's episode where it feels like a repetition of a motive, or it feels like basically like greedy money. He's going after an invention. He might kill his partner for that invention simply to gain money. So I like that, and the invention's pretty cool. Being able to talk to marine life. I think that's really a cool invention that warrants someone to steal it. I could see why he would want to steal it and make profit off of that. So I feel like it's a unique enough motive. It doesn't feel derivative of a previous motive. So I really like the motive of the villain. I say that's the one aspect of the villain that was done right, is the motive department. The motive was great. It was the exact opposite of last week, where everything but the motive was great last week. But this week, everything, the motive's the only good thing, and everything else sucked in the villain department. So yeah. And then finally, you have the setting, which I talked about a little bit earlier. I thought the setting was good and felt very different. You had, Oceanland, which was basically like an aquarium, as the setting. It's pretty unique. We haven't visited an aquarium yet in the Scooby Doo Where Are You series, so it was nice and refreshing. Not the creepiest setting in the world, like I mentioned with the atmosphere, but I do like that they tried something different. I wish they maybe could have tried a little bit harder to make it feel a little bit more creepy. But I feel like the setting was good because of how unique it was, and I like that they tried a new setting and it didn't feel like last week where it was, very bland and boring and repetitive. This felt like a new setting that, we hadn't seen it. Like, yeah, an aquarium's an everyday thing, but it's not something we've seen the Scooby Gang go to. It's more, specific location than the last episode. So yeah, I find the setting to be pretty good in this episode. Pretty unique. So overall, guys, would I recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show? Not really. No. I had to wrestle with it. It was a 3 out of 5. But honestly, like, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad in this episode, but I feel like with this episode, it just doesn't feel strong enough for me to say, yeah, if you're in the right mood, you could rewatch it. No, I just don't feel like this is not an episode I see myself rewatching or revisiting in the future. It just doesn't have that quality that I'm looking for, and I don't know how you guys might do it, but it just isn't the type of episode that I would recommend to go back and watch. I don't think it's the perfect example of a decent episode or a good episode of Scooby Doo Where Are You. It's definitely one of the weaker ones of season 2. So, the past couple of episodes have kind of been, up and down. Since episode 1, which was a really good season high at the start off the season, we went from 3 to 2 to back to 3. So we're basically flip-flopping between average and below average. Hasn't been good so far. Hopefully we'll get a good episode in the next 4, or otherwise this is not going to be a good season. But yeah, I just can't in good faith recommend it. I don't think it's one of those episodes you can rewatch and revisit. But I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether you think this might be the episode to come watch for you, or if it's not. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? If you do, please tell me what you love about the episode. I would love to hear what about the Caveman episode you like. Do you hate this episode? I'd also be interested to hear about. Is this, what do you hate this episode with a passion? Do you think it's terrible? Or are you somewhere like me where, you're in the middle and you think it's somewhere in the middle where you think it's average and it's like, okay, step up from the previous episode, but still not good. I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, of course I will have more Scooby Doo content in the coming up, following this review to continue my summer special. And of course we have Scooby Month in September, so good time to be a Scooby Doo fan on my channel and watch some Scooby Doo content. So while I didn't really have much to say on this episode, I'm sure the next I do believe the next episode I probably will definitely have more to say. But yeah, if you're interested in any other content, you might have to wait a little bit, possibly October or November. But if you're a Scooby Doo fan, it's a good time because I'll be having a lot of Scooby Doo content, more Scooby Doo content to come. So yeah. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talk about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. So in my next video, I will continue my summer special with a review of Season 2, Episode 5 of Scooby Doo, Where Are You?, which is titled The Haunted House Hang-Up, the episode with the Headless Spectre. That's going to be a really good one. I think I have pretty fond memories of this one, so here's to hoping that we will have a very good episode. I do think we will have a good one. We'll have to see if I still feel that way, but I've heard a lot of great things about it, and I'm excited because it can't be any worse than the last couple I've been. Let's hope we get back to the highs of episode 1 and get a really good episode. But yes, join me for that, as I'll be reviewing that in my next video. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace out.
Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby Dooby Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. Come on, Scooby Doo, I see you, pretending you got a sliver. You're not fooling me, 'cause I can see the way you shake and shiver.